So let's start with this. We're in absolute full-on footy mode, and you can see your social media timelines would have been dominated by that. There's content everywhere. Gary and Tim are back. They've had a huge lineup of AFL figures rolling through their studio. AFL.com.au's up and running. The Age and the Herald Sun are competing for content. We're back, and it's not too far away. Intra-club's happening. Next week there'll be the practice game, so we are absolutely back. And as I mentioned, a couple of intra-clubs today, the Western Bulldogs, Collingwood, happening right now as we speak. North Melbourne have had theirs. And it was a 22-second video clip that North posted on its social media today that had me thinking. What was the clip? Well, it was George Wardlaw. He kicked a snap goal and then he executed a rundown tackle while somehow simultaneously snatching the ball before centering the kick with his left foot. And not for the first time, I've thought to myself, this kid's an absolute freak. So the raw speed, the power, the toughness, you can't take your eyes off him. Last year I said he's a weapon. Wardlaw the weapon, I'm calling him, and it feels like it's a... I know Horne-Francis has been linked to Dangerfield, but Wardlaw's got a bit of Dangerfield. He's got a bit of Paul Kelly in him. He's got a bit of Anthony Stevens in him, the North Melbourne legend. And I love seeing it. But he's just one of many young prodigies running around that we've got at the moment. What I want to talk about tonight is the fact that the league has never been more talented. I'm absolutely sure of it. Now, if you follow the American sports, and some of you get a little bit fatigued when we draw comparisons to our game with the big American sports, but it's hard not to. In the NBA, they reckon it's the most talented league that they've ever had right now. Scoring's exploded. The new generation of players have offensive weapons that we've never seen before. They've got height and they've got athleticism that we've never seen before. And I reckon the same applies here. So let's use last year's Brownlow medal leaderboard as evidence of that. Nick Dacos was 30, would have won it. If he didn't get injured, he's just turned 21. Errol Goulden was 4th, he's 21. Zach Butters finished 5th, he's 23. Sarong was 7th, he's also 23, and Noah Anderson rounded out the top 10, he's 22. John Newcomb, Chad Warner, and my man, Jason Horne-Francis, also voted prominently, and they are 22, 22, and 20 respectively. Now, some bemoan the fact that there's no 100-goal forwards anymore, but it is undeniable that this is the most talented the league has ever been. And if you want further evidence to that, go and watch the highlights of the grand final. We got Zach Bailey slotting them from everywhere. Link McCarthy's the same. Charlie Cameron setting fire to the MCG in the second quarter. Nick Dacos with no-look handballs while suspended in midair. Bobby Hill doing his thing in the air and on the ground. Set shots from outside 50 that were going through post-high. It was unbelievable. It was the best grand final I've ever seen. I don't think there's been a grand final with as many highlights as that. And then there's also the fundamentals that players are just doing better now than they have in any other era. And I reckon the advancements in club facilities, particularly the indoor footy ovals that everyone has now, maybe that's the reason for it. Players are spending hours with the development coaches indoors when no one's watching and away from the cameras. Lachie Neale's got 2 Brownlow medals. He never fumbles, and he works harder on his game and his hands than perhaps any other player ever has. Now, provided Wardlaw's hamstrings hold up, the sky's the limit for him. But he's just one of a cluster that North have, and they're all coming through together. Sheasel's blown our socks off, and we haven't even seen Dersma and McKercher yet, but the raps are huge. The Wizard Watson at Hawthorn has serious tricks, and we know Harley Reid is going to be a freak. Well, at least if you read the back page of the West Australian. 2024 might be the year that the AFL just explodes with young offensive freaks, just like it has done in the NBA. 1300 736 736. If on Fox Footy you're at home and you just happen to have the channel on, might be the off season and they're replaying a game from, 10 years ago or 20 years ago when I was running around. Compare the standard of play then to what it is right now. And whilst we can whinge and we can complain about missed shots on goal and inaccuracy in front of goal, and I get it, and there's other areas that we can complain about, when you look back and when you see what Wardlaw is doing in his second pre-season, when you've seen what Dacos and Goulden and Butters and Sarong and Anderson and Newcomb and Day and Warner and Horne-Francis are doing, we're absolutely stacked. Is it the best you've ever seen it? And do we need to take a glass half full approach of what footy might look like in 2024 as a result? We'd love your thoughts. 1300 736 736 if you want to have your say on that. The other thing, before we get Todd Marshall up, that I wanted to discuss. Look, I've been quite harsh on Luke Beveridge, and I think harsh but fair. Some would say too harsh. Some would say I've gone over the top if you look at my social media mentions. But I just wanted to address what I said on Monday with Bucks, the fact that he's gone missing this off-season. And you as footy fans, I want to ask you, is it important to you to hear from your coach in the off-season or in the pre-season when games are just around the corner? So I mentioned that these are all the coaches that have featured prominently in the media in recent weeks or this pre-season. Fagan was in the studio yesterday. Terrific chat with Gary and Tim. Michael Voss, extensive chat to afl.com.au and also on the club website. Now, two that hadn't done anything was Craig Macrae and Chris Scott. Well, they've since done that. Craig Macrae did a pretty interesting piece with afl.com.au yesterday. Spoke about the fact that he doesn't see himself as a long-term coach. And Chris Scott, well, he was with Gary and Tim with a fascinating interview again today. So there's another two that have done media. Hardwick's been everywhere. Kingsley's been everywhere. Sam Mitchell spoke about his near-death experience in New York as if he wanted to do that. Simon Goodwin pre-Christmas. Ken Hinkley was everywhere last week. He's on afl.com.au again today. He was in the studio with Jared last week. Adam Uze's done a couple of things. Ross Lyon, John Longmire, Adam Simpson's another one today. Luke Beveridge, where's Bevo? I can't find him. Now, Amit Baines was good enough to speak with Josh Gabelich, and we're going to speak to Josh about that chat. Addressed a whole heap of things, including his confidence in the coach Luke Beveridge to turn things around, and Tim English and all of that stuff that needed to be addressed. But my question to you is, do you want to hear from your coach? I do. I do. I definitely do. I think the most fascinating interviews that we get are from those that are the smartest people in football. And that is Chris Scott, who we heard from today. Or wasn't that worth it for Geelong fans who wanted an update on a couple of their young players that he's been impressed with this pre? So I want to hear from John Longmire. Smart people. Luke Beveridge is smart. He's a premiership coach, but has, for whatever reason, shunned the media spotlight. Jake Stringer sat down with Timmy Watson, our very own, on Channel 7 the other night, and he spoke about his mentality and how he's feeling this pre-season.
It's probably the best mentally I've been, and that's probably helping physically as well. So yeah, I'd say in that sense, I'd say it probably is the best pre-season that I've had so far. When I had my foot surgery, I just really, tried to figure out things in my life that I needed to figure out, and there's things that I'll continue to work on all the way through.
And you know what I'll continue to say? I've had my positive thoughts on the game and where it's going. Nothing motivates a player, as I've said before, like being out of contract. Surprise, surprise, Jake Stringer's feeling the best he's ever felt. He looks fit, he looks sharp, he looks ready. He's out of contract. Oh, okay. Well, I better click myself into gear. I better try. I better get fit. I better run in the off-season because I'm out of contract. It's bizarre that at 29 years of age, with the amount of football that he's played and the experience, that it takes that motivational factor for him to finally feel good and get fit. We saw it a couple of years ago when he had that amazing season, signed the 3-year contract extension. He wants to go again. You watch. He'll have a great year this year. I guarantee you it. Cam Zurhaar is the same. It always fascinates me that sometimes for some players, it takes the fact that they're out of contract to really motivate them to get fit. There's a couple of questions on the Bombers. G'day, Kane. I'm interested in your initial assessment of the Bombers in 2024. I'm a passionate fan. I believe that we'll improve, but given the quality of the sides likely to make the 8, one finals win may be a successful outcome. If not, we wait another. Oh, you take that. You take a finals win right now. If someone guaranteed you that as a Bombers fan, you take that. Look, Gary spoke this morning, Gary Lyon, about not trusting Gold Coast. I feel the same about Essendon. I like the language. Feels like the group's really motivated. They're saying all the right things. They're doing all the right things. They're led well. The coach is impressive and is experienced. They're a big club, but I just don't trust them. And that's the brutal reality of it. And I think there's reasons behind that. Probably Essendon fans don't trust them themselves. We'll get to you in a sec. Johnny, big news not big news, but noteworthy news. We'll speak to Josh Gabelich about this, is that Jack Macrae has been dropped as a Western Bulldogs vice captain and has not even been included in the leadership group. Tom Liberatore is now in that leadership space and has taken the void. I don't mind it. When things haven't worked, change it up. And it's a reasonably drastic change on the surface because it would be a big hit to Jack Macrae's ego. I don't know what the leadership process was like. I've read that it was a player vote, so it's quite confronting when you've been in that space for a couple of years and you're held in high regard and your playing resume is absolutely stacked. Then all of a sudden, your peers don't vote for you to drive the standards of the club. But it's a good thing. It hasn't worked. You've underperformed as a side. Start changing it. They've changed the whole coaching staff, high performance staff. Everything's changed. Head of footy's changed. And now the actual player leadership group is changing as well. You've got an excellent captain. I'm going to speak about captains tomorrow night, actually. But if he's not the best captain in the game, he's close, Marcus Bontempelli. He needs more help. He's been let down by his teammates around him. That's part of the reason the side can't stop run-ons. They're poor defensively. A lot of issues at that football club. So change it, and that's what they're doing, and I like it. I'd just love to hear from Luke Beveridge so he can explain that to us as well. We will continue waiting on that one. 1300 736 736. Just on Macrae. He's out of contract at the end of 2027, so a while yet. But would you be surprised if he sought a different club to sort of revitalise his career at the end of this year? I wouldn't. Now, the mid-season trade period is not in yet, but he'd be a prime candidate for a club looking for extra run and midfield depth and ball use halfway through the year that's in that premiership window. He'd be a prime target for a club, I reckon, and it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for the Western Bulldogs to let him go. So, look, he's contracted. There's a lot of other priorities personnel-wise at the Dogs, including English, Hugo Hagan and Bailey Smith, but perhaps there'd be a few phone calls being made to Jack Macrae's management on the back of last year and a lesser role that he played and his form dropping off, and now him being voted out of not only being a vice-captain but the leadership group altogether. John's in Norwood. The other big news of the day, Johnny, is that Nathan Murphy's going to sit out of the Collingwood practice games. He's not yet fully confident in himself, ready to go. Of course, he's had the concussion issues. What do you make of it?
I just think the AFL, with all this concussion claims and all this thing, they should take a stance on it and say, no, you can't play until you tick a few boxes. That's my opinion. Because he's getting a whack in the pre-season. What's it be like in the real game? Yeah, I just can't believe where the AFL don't take a stance.
Well, look, I think, Johnny, to be fair, the AFL have made him go through an independent assessment after the concussion issues that he has had. Now, he's been cleared of that. He's had a couple of, I guess, scary moments, I think, throughout the pre-season. Not necessarily concussions, but incidents that could have led to concussion, including a tackle from Nick Dacos, which he escaped. But he's just not feeling confident, and I can understand that right now. It's with everything going on, that he's ready to go. So he's in good hands. Like, these players are in very good hands. He's going to be on a modified program, and look, I'm sure he'll be back. But there's no doubt it's a big story with the way that he plays the game, with how courageous he is with his age, and the fact that he doesn't yet feel confident to play. It means he's out of round one. He can't just turn up and play round one with no pre-season game. So, look, I don't think there's any blame here on the AFL. I think they've done all the right things. There's certainly no blame on Collingwood. It sounds like they're managing the situation maturely and putting the players' welfare first, as the CEO, Craig Kelly, has spoken to on the back of the Mark Robinson article suggesting that Nathan Murphy should retire from the game. And they're handling it pretty well. So, look, I don't quite see it as you do, but I understand it's a divisive issue, and a lot of people have got their thoughts on concussion. First and foremost, our thoughts are always with the player. One of the coaches who has done the media rounds is Adam Simpson. I've got some thoughts on the West Coast Eagles, as you can imagine, and the biggest talking point out west has been on Harley Reid. Just read the front and back pages of the West Australian, and you'll know that. Here's Adam Simpson speaking on Harley Reid and how they're going to use him this year.
I just hope we collectively as a state look after him. We want to keep him forever over here. So, yeah, look, he's going really well for an 18-year-old kid who, is carrying a lot of expectations. I think the way he plays also allows him to win his own ball and
5 seconds.
Senior football pretty well so far, albeit he's very young.
And I agree with that. I hope they do look after him. And I've spoken at length on breakfast with Sammy Edmund and Bucks about this. And look, once again, there's no fault in this. There's no fault on the media over there because that's what people want to read about. There's no fault on the club. They're doing their best to temper the expectations. They're going to play him across halfback and through the midfield like other young players coming through have done. Dacos and Sheasel. We're seeing Macrae from North doing that today in the interclub. So it's not a bad strategy for that. And also just on the expectations of the West Coast Eagles, Adam Simpson has spoken not on win-loss, but he's spoken on what he expects, and that is competitiveness. That is keeping the ball in the front half of the ground. That is the contest, and that's all that they can be measured on. And I've been hard on the Eagles, and I don't back away from anything that I have said, but that's the measurement for them. It's not win-loss. It's, okay, we're halfway through the first quarter. The game can't be over. We can't have senior players allowing the opposition to walk through tackles. It was embarrassing last year, their contest work. So it's basic, but I'm glad to read that that's how they're going to measure the group. Look, we're going to focus on winning the ball back in our front half. We're going to focus on the contest. We're going to play with passion because they were meek and mild last year. The body language of the players was ordinary, and yep, they had their challenges personnel-wise, particularly with their senior players and availability as they've spoken to, but they can judge it. Whoever puts the Guernsey on can only be judged on those things, and that's what I can judge them on. Okay, are you executing that? Are you winning turnovers in your front half? Are you competitive? Are you bringing energy? What's your contest work like? So forget the win-loss. That's how we'll judge the Eagles this year, which I think is a good thing.